Welcome to Paranormal Gumbo with your hosts, Angel and Aaron.
Hey, welcome to Paranormal Gumbo. This is Aaron.
And this is Angel.
Where we talk about all things paranormal and try to add a little dose of humor.
A big dose of humor.
There you go.
So, today, we're going to talk about ghosts. Just ghosts in general.
Ghosts in general.
Yeah.
But what I envision us doing today is for all of the people out there that don't know what a ghost is, let's kind of explain to them what's happening, and then with later episodes, here going into October, we will talk more about the different kinds of hauntings.
Right. Well, it depends on who you ask as far as ghosts and that kind of thing. But basically, the two things that you're really looking at on the most basic level would be, is it a conscious thing or is it a residual thing?
Yeah.
And I think there's both.
Yeah.
I don't see why a house or an area in particular can't record something just like you record it on video camera or something.
Exactly, yes.
I think they'll find out eventually that certain atmospheres and certain emotions do record on some level.
Yes.
I mean, if you stop and think how they record things on video, on digital, on tape, I don't care how. It blows my mind personally how that actually works. But if you think about it on the small enough level, it's absolutely amazing that we can even record our voices. I mean, if you or I were to sit down and try to recreate that from scratch, it ain't going to happen. We'll still be trying to start a fire with our stone tools.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, years ago, I got super excited about this, and this doesn't have to go on the podcast if you don't want it to, but it was right around April 1st, so it wasn't April 1st itself. But someone said that they took a piece of pottery that they've got out of one of the pyramids, and they were able to basically do like a record, where they put the right size stick into the groove.
Really?
And when they went along, you could hear the voices of the people that were making the pottery. It's fake. I got super excited about it, though.
Oh, it wasn't real?
It wasn't real.
Oh,
I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
That would have been so cool. Oh, April 1st, though.
Yeah, it wasn't April Fool's Day.
Oh.
It was right around that time, yeah.
Well, that wasn't right for them to do that when it's not April Fool's.
Yeah, I was pissed off. I was upset.
That's kind of cool.
But yeah, getting back on topic now, ghosts. Ghost. Yeah.
Ghost.
Yeah, ghost.
So there was a survey done by Chapman University in 2017. That was the most recent I found. That said 52% of Americans believe in ghosts.
Yeah.
I think it's probably more than that, honestly, and they just don't want to admit it to people. That's not something we really talk about all the time, unless you're weirdos like us.
Like us, yeah. We talk about this shit like pretty much every time Angel and I talk, we bring up ghosts, demons.
It's just like every day for us.
Yeah, pretty freaking much. Yeah. It's the weirdest shit in the world.
We've seen a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. You've seen a lot more than I have, but, I mean, we've both seen some shit.
I've lived in 2 houses that were very haunted. Well, 3 that were very haunted, one being blowing the other 2 away.
Yeah.
But also, we kind of have that thing in our family where we can kind of
I can always
pick up on things that not everybody does necessarily, and we get it from I know our grandmother did the same thing. I don't know about on your
my
dad's
great
side of the
grandmother,
family.
your grandmother.
Yeah, your great grandmother.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we've seen a lot of stuff, or we could be crazy. I don't know, but
maybe a little bit of both.
I used to think that I was scared to death that maybe I was schizophrenic or something like that. But then I started being able to verify the things that I saw with other people. Like, for instance, I saw a plane crash, and I was babysitting a child at the time, and I put him down for a nap, and then I was watching TV, and all of a sudden I just got this overwhelming grogginess, and I just passed out. I mean, it was not like normally when you're, watching TV and you start getting groggy and then you pass. It was like just all of a sudden overwhelming.
You're done. You're out.
Yeah. Well, what happened while I was out is I dreamt that I was in a plane, and it was a small plane, a white plane with orange trim, and there was a family in it, and the family was just out flying, and they flew too low, and they clipped pine trees, and they crashed into a college. Mm-hmm. And I was there trying to help them. The dad died in my dream. And all of a sudden, I woke up by this loud explosion. Mm-hmm. And it was so loud, I could even feel the house shaking. Yeah. And I looked, the baby didn't wake up. Yeah. He didn't hear it. So this was in my head and in my dream, apparently not, there in reality. I called my mother all upset. I was a teenager at the time. I called her all upset. I'm like, Mama, this was not a dream. I saw it. It happened. I know this really happened. Yeah. And she calmed me down. The next day, it was in the newspaper that in College Park, Texas, a family was flying in a white plane with orange trim. Yeah. They flew too low, clipped the pine trees, caused them to crash. The father died. Yeah. So I was actually here in this plane and watched all this stuff spiritually. Until that moment, I thought, well, maybe I am a little crazy. Yeah. But you can't, how do you dispute that? Everything's right there. Yeah. And I wish I was young. I didn't save the newspaper clipping. I wish I had done that. Mm-hmm. And the day before, I had actually wrote up everything that was in my dream. Oh, damn. And I don't still have it because Katrina took everything I had. But anyways, it was really an eye-opener for me because, like I say, that was the first time I knew that I wasn't completely crazy. I might be crazy, but not with that, not in that aspect of it. And stuff like that doesn't happen to me all the time, but at least it was nice. Yeah, to get that validation that you're not insane. Yeah. So, I don't know. Have you ever had anything like that happen to you? Not really. I mean, the craziest thing I've had happen like that hadn't happened since I was younger, like way, way younger. But at points in time, I was able to see through other people's eyes. Mm-hmm. I wasn't asleep. It's like, I'm walking down the street, and then all of a sudden my perspective changes. And I can see me walking down the street. And it was just the weirdest shit in the world, yeah. That is really weird. Yeah. I don't think I've heard of that before. Yeah, it was... I mean, not being awake. Yeah. Yeah, it's happened several times. It hadn't happened since, I was maybe 10 years old. But, when I was a kid, it used to happen quite often. But that's pretty cool. Yeah. You'll have to let me know if that happens again. Well, one of the weirdest things that I can remember is I threw a nickel at someone. And, let's see, it was at my grandmother's place in Louisiana. It was at the hallway. I think it was Shane, my brother Shane. And I threw a nickel at him. And I was able to take on the perspective of the nickel. And I was able to guide it, because when I threw it, it was way off. But then, my perspective changed, and I became pretty much the nickel, and I was able to steer it back in the course and hit him. Wow! I didn't hit him in the face or anything, with the nickel. I hit him in the gut. But that's pretty cool. That was like the weirdest shit that's happened to me. I would have to say of something like that's weirder than my story even. I don't know. That's pretty cool. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. I hope that at least I brought that family some comfort on some level. Maybe they thought I was some sort of an angel or something. Oh, Angel's the angel? What? I don't know why I was there. I've always wondered what connection did I have with that family because I did not know that family. I didn't even know there was a College Park, Texas. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Yeah. Anyways. Moving on. Yeah, moving on. Back to ghosts. We're off topic, people. Sorry about that. Well, we kind of are, but I mean, it kind of is too because that proves to me that there's something to do with the spiritual world. And I guess that's why I wanted to throw that in there because, I know that it doesn't prove it to everybody, but to me it does prove it. And if you have something like that happen, you're not going to doubt that there's more to this life than what we think there are. So we talk about residual hauntings versus hauntings where there are beings that are conscious. And, there's been so many situations where people have those hauntings where things actually interact with them.
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of consciousness, as well. So I believe in both types myself.
I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. Of course, this is just mine. We've talked about alternate universes, multiple dimensions. When we die, we leave this dimension. We move to a next one. Mm-hmm. And every now and then, we're able to see into that alternate dimension. We're able to see into that. So that's my take on it. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it could be. I know that we'll talk more about this on our episode for EVPs, and we'll actually play it. But I know that you and I, our grandmother, my grandmother, your great-grandmother, actually contacted us after she died.
Yeah, and I've told several people this. It's like last week I was telling you the story of Ricky, who works at Josette's.
Right.
Was saying that he wasn't a believer. And that's fine. Hey, if you don't want to believe, that's you.
That's okay.
What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to present.
Some people can't handle it.
Yes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to present stuff to you and let you make your own choice. But I told him, without a doubt, 100%, that by the time we get done with him, he's going to be a believer. And I told him the story of Granny and the tape, the EVP tape, which we need to get on.
We will. We will work on that. We need to do an episode of EVPs, and we'll play that. But basically what happened is...
How about we do the EVP stuff during...
Halloween.
Halloween, yeah. That can be our Halloween
really
show.
Cool. That would be really
Yeah, because
cool.
that would be awesome right there, because we've got the clear cut, this is my great-grandmother, your grandmother's voice.
It's really
play
cool.
The tape.
But basically what happened, to go through it really briefly, and we'll talk about it more then, is she actually left a message 2 weeks to the day after she died.
I thought it was closer to a month.
It might have been. I could be wrong on the whole time frame. It seems like it was 2 weeks, but it might have been. I know it was to the day. I do know that. It was to the day after she died. And I do know it was a full moon. Anyways, she actually called and left us a message on our voicemail.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, we buried her with a telephone because she was always on the telephone. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Anyways, but she left a voicemail for us, and she actually said, "Please know I've crossed over to the world of the better." Yeah. And she, so wherever she is...
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps. We're just talking about it. It's going to be weird hearing that shit again. I mean,
it will be.
How long has it been since we've heard that? I know it's been a while.
Many years. I quit listening to it because I do hear her voice and I love her, and that's awesome, but there's other spirit voices in there.
Yes.
And they're very creepy.
Yes.
And I don't know what all they're saying. You can't tell all of it. And then some of it is pieces of radio. Yeah. And the cool thing is, too, the number that it came from was 000-000-000-000. Huh. So that's kind of cool that, it came from that number on the caller ID.
Yeah. I didn't know that part.
At least it didn't come from 666.
Yeah, for real, right? It's like, holy shit, Granny, what's been going on?
But, so, and not only that, but when she was sick, because she passed away from cancer, when she was sick, we brought her into our den, and that's where her hospital bed was. Yeah. That's where she passed away.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's where that phone and that answering machine were. Yep. So it's kind of cool. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. But also, things would happen, like she gave me this little fountain before she passed away. It was a water fountain. You put water in it, you put batteries in it, plays music, and the water goes around.
The water goes through the fountain, yeah.
Well, it would just go off like crazy after she died. Yeah. So we took the batteries out of it.
And it would still go off.
It continued to go off. Even without batteries, it continued to go off. It would play, not only would it play music, but the water would go around and all that. So, and it did finally quit, but I know that she was around for a certain amount of time after she died.
Oh, she may still be around. We don't know. It's been a while since we've spoken to her, but...
Sometimes, it seems like you can feel your loved ones around, and then sometimes you have dreams where it's almost, you wake up and it's like you just went to visit them somewhere. Have you ever had that happen? Yeah. And then it's like you want to even say, "Oh yeah, I just talked to Grandma." Oh wait, no, I didn't.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, one of the other things about Granny is, I don't know if you remember telling me this, but you called me one night and you said, Ethan, which is your son, just saw something. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Apparently you guys were in the living room watching TV, and he was looking into a corner, speaking to someone.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, Ethan, who are you speaking to? Or Reggie, who are you speaking to? And he said, Mildred.
He said, Mama Mildred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is our great-grandmother, my great-grandmother's name, your grandmother's name.
And
he wouldn't have known that because we only called her Granny.
And he had... And not only did he have no way of knowing that, but she died when he was just a little bit over a year old. And he had no memory of her forever. But we had a little angel, a little plaque that was an angel on the wall, and it said some kind of little poem. I don't remember. But it was always right there. I don't know if it had anything to do with that plaque, but that angel was right there on the wall. And he would just sit there and laugh and talk to that area and that kind of thing. I do remember, and he did it more than once. He did it all the time for years, for several years.
I remember the first time that happened, though. It was like, it was late at night because, we're all night owls, and you called, and I'm like, well, shit, something's wrong. Something's not good here.
Yeah.
And then you told me that story. I'm like, well, holy shit, that's awesome.
Yeah, because that's back when I was still, freaked out when something would happen. Now I'm like, okay. Yeah. I'm so used to things,
It's like, it's happening again. Shit.
But my son is one of those people that, not as much anymore because he just turned 18 and he's older now, but used to see things like
left
crazy.
And right.
Yeah, I mean, he would tell me lots of things. So, I don't know. She was a very spiritual person before she died. Not necessarily religious, but spiritual. She was kind of religious too, but very spiritual, and saw things herself and would tell us things. And, but so I guess it makes sense that after she died, she was strong enough to come through to.
Yeah, I remember
ways.
I think it was your dad telling me the story of one night. Back in the day when you guys still had the wood-burning stove, she woke up and went and talked to your dad and said, you've got to go check the stove. Something's up with the stove. And your dad kind of brushed it off, and she insisted. And he's like, okay, Mom, I'm going to go ahead and go. And apparently someone had put a 5-gallon gas can next to the wood-burning stove outside, and it was about to blow up.
Right. What happened, that is the basic gist of it, except it gets a little creepier than that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Go ahead.
She had cancer. This was her second bout with cancer. She had 3, and the third one finally took her. But she was really ill. They didn't expect her to make it. She was not, I can't say she was comatose, but she was about as close to comatose as you can get without being comatose. I mean, she didn't wake up for anything, she was dying, they thought. They didn't expect her to make it. So she was laying in her bed, and all of a sudden she sits bolt upright and starts screaming, Gary, Gary, Gary. Yeah. That's my dad's name. So he came in there, and she said, a man just knocked on the door, and he told me that I can't remember the exact words she used. What was that?
I don't know.
Hey, Irma.
Yeah, for real, right?
Anyways, and
my phone's on silent, so I've got no clue.
I don't know. And he told me that thing up against the heater is about to explode. And Dad's like, okay. So he kind of didn't think too much of it. But he went out and checked, and yes, there was a gas can somebody had set right up against the heater. It was red. It was about to explode. Yeah. And my dad was able to move it, and we avoided tragedy. She went right back to sleep, was gone. I mean, she didn't die. I don't mean that, but she was back into her almost comatose-like state. Had no idea. Now, years later, when we talked to her about it, she remembered it.
Really?
Yeah, she did remember it, but she said it was just like somebody. She was in the room, and somebody came to the door and knocked and told her this, like it was real, like it happened.
My dad told me a story. Whenever he was younger, he was at my great grandfather's house, and he was sleeping in his bed, and for some reason, his bed, I guess it may have been like a pull-out couch or something, but the screen door, the front door, the screen door of the house was right in front of him. They had the main door open, because, back in the day, he couldn't really afford the AC and shit. And he said he saw his great-grandfather come to the screen door and ask him to come open the door. And he's like, well, why can't you? And he's like, I can't. and then he vanished. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
So, that's one of those situations.
Yeah. Where,
I wonder if that was really his.
That's what I was about to say. Was it really him?
Well, yeah, because
or
you've
was
got
it something
these
that
beings
needed
like
permission to
black-eyed
come
kids,
in? Yeah.
and they talk about, the Fae and things like that where they need permission to enter.
Yeah.
And, of course, the classic vampire needs permission to enter. But, they talk about these spirits that are not so necessarily beneficent.
Yeah, but you've got to think, too. It's like he's seeing his great-grandfather who's dead.
Yeah, to him, that's his great-grandfather.
Yeah, that's the weirdest shit right there.
And it still could have been. Maybe, he couldn't
Maybe he couldn't interact with the screen door,
But it does raise some red flags for me.
Yeah.
Still.
Oh yeah. That's
cool.
always been my thing. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was something else.
You never know. Well, and ultimately, that's one of the things that is so frustrating because we don't know. Period. Mm-hmm. Was that really our grandmother that came through?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But can we prove it?
Yeah.
It could have been something else. It could have been some spirit, evil spirit imitating her or whatever.
Or it could have been a good spirit, trying to set our sorrow at ease.
You never know. I know that it definitely wasn't in our minds, because it did happen. But it's weird in the recording, and you'll hear when we finally play it, some of it is in her voice.
Yes.
Some of it, though, sounds like a robot or something. It's like this tinny electronic voice.
What I explain to people whenever I describe this to them is people that have tricks like, hey, how are you doing? That's exactly what it sounded like to me.
Very much what it sounded like.
And I may be completely wrong. I may be remembering it different. But whenever you hear we've moved on to the world of the better, I hear something scream and then it shuts off. And whenever it speaks, we moved on to the world of the better, it's in that, hey, how are you doing? It's me, Ned, from South Park.
Just like that. Yeah. So, I don't know. They say that spirits how they communicate is they can use the sounds around them, like radio sounds and things like that. And you can hear in this recording that there's radio sounds playing. You can hear a DJ at some point and stuff like that. So she, I do believe that's how she was communicating, is pulling those sounds together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, 110%.
Yeah, but wherever she is, there's a lot going on because there was a lot of other spirits.
There was a lot more than just her.
There really were. You could. I would love to have someone analyze it, and unfortunately, what I have is it was a digital voicemail.
Yeah.
Thing, not a tape. So I have an old cassette tape. I just played it and recorded it on that. So you lose some quality from there automatically. But, I'd still love to have somebody analyze that.
That'd be fantastic.
Who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, knows what they're doing.
There's no telling what they could get out of it. So, maybe we can get somebody to do that. Maybe before Halloween. You never know. We can...
Yeah,
we can feelers out and see.
Let's go over the different types of ghosts real quick. I've got this pulled up real quick.
Okay.
We can go over the different types of ghosts. There's 5 main types of ghosts. You've got the interactive personality. Mm-hmm. The most common of all ghosts spotted is usually of a deceased person, someone you know, a family member, perhaps even a historical figure. And that's one type. The ectoplasm or ectomist, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's, mist or ectoplasm that just kind of appears.
I've seen that too. And usually at the ceiling or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's normally like a ghostly mist, that sort of thing. Then we've got the poltergeist, the most popular one, but also pretty much the rarest, which, everyone's heard of poltergeist, mainly because of the movie.
Right.
Usually it starts out as a noisy ghost, but then it can gradually get worse and worse. Shit can get thrown across the room, that sort of thing. Number 4, they say, is orbs. And this is when people are taking video or pictures, you'll see orbs. And I've got an opinion on that, but, we'll go beyond that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
And what orbs are supposed to be is the spirit of people hovering around places where they've died or they're haunting.
Right.
And then the last one's going to be funnel ghosts.
Funnel ghosts?
Yeah. Most often spotted in homes or old historical buildings. A funnel ghost or vortex is frequently associated with a cold spot. They usually take on the shape of a swirling funnel, and most paranormal experts believe they are loved ones returning for a visit or even a former resident of the home.
I've never heard of that. Yeah. Have you?
No. Well, this is, appearing as a wisp of light or swirling spiral of light. They are often caught on photographs or in video. But I've never heard them referred to as vortex ghost.
Yeah, I've never heard of that either.
Yeah, I've never heard them referred to as funnel ghost.
So, what is your opinion on orbs?
I think it's dust.
I think a lot of times it is.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some times where, yes, it may be something, especially whenever it's moving fast or moving in an erratic nature. But for the most part, I think maybe it's just dust.
I'm going to have to go back and dig out some of my old phones and get video off of them and stuff.
Now, you've sent me some video, and some of the stuff that you've sent me, I'm like, well, yeah, that is 100%
because they would react
not
with
dust.
us.
Yes.
They would react. I would say, if you're really here, blink twice, and the orb would blink twice. Or I'd say, move to the left to let me, and they'd move to the left. And this was in that really super haunted house we lived in by the cemetery, which I don't generally believe cemeteries are haunted too much.
Yeah.
But this house, something happened there in that area, and it was definitely haunted.
Yeah, I remember you sending me that video. I remember seeing that video, and I'm like, well, me.
Exactly. I was surprised myself, and you could see them with the naked eye as well, and I would videotape them. And I also have videotape. My son would start meditating, which he always did. He just kind of came into the world meditating. Yeah. He would meditate before his little soccer games when he was in Pee-wee soccer, and he would sit before the soccer games and just meditate. Anyways, but so he would meditate, and you would see these orbs going in and out of him. And it was the weirdest things. The more he would get into the meditation, the more orbs would come out of him. And it was weird. I probably never showed you that. I just got chills doing it. But I have a lot of that footage on my old phone. Yeah. So I'll have to get that because we need
bring
to get
that
that
shit
kind
next
of stuff
time.
up.
Yes. Bring that next time, and we'll.
Well, I can't promise next time because I've got to find these things. I hope I even still have them. So. Okay.
Yeah, shit, me too.
I guess over the years when I've gotten proof, I've not taken it that seriously because I just, things like that have happened. Yes. And I'm like, okay, here it goes again. But, and I guess I never probably saw myself in a format like this where other people would
where you
really
would need or want that,
But I'm going to I'll try to dig that out.
Yeah. So. That's my opinion on orbs, though. For the most part, a lot of it's going to be dust.
Yeah, usually.
But
there are some things. You do get those orbs.
I have seen video where, you've got these orbs that people are freaking out about, and they're going one way. And then you've got one that travels extremely fast the exact opposite way. It's like, well, that's not dust.
That's not dust. It's either a bug or a real spirit because it's going against the wind.
Yep.
So, yeah. But, it was Albert Einstein who said that basically... energy cannot be created or destroyed, but only change form. Yeah. So what happens to our body's energy when we die? We transcend
this plane of existence. We go to another one.
Yeah, our energy.
That's what I hope, anyways. So. I'm not going to say it's heaven. I'm not going to say it's hell, but we're going to go somewhere different.
I don't think it's that simple myself.
Yeah.
I think that, then I got to be careful because we'll get into, religion and that kind of thing.
I don't want to start a whole theological debate. I'm more of a spiritual
person than a religious person. And I think you too, or I know you are too. You're a bad Catholic.
I am. I'm a horrible
You're gonna be a Lugaroo if you're not already because you haven't celebrated Lent for 7 years.
By the way, Kelly called me. He told me that the woman that helped me out with the sunstroke, he told me what she's called. And I forgot. I'm sorry. But he said it's just a spiritual healer. Huh. It's just a healer.
And she's not alive anymore, though. Find out again from me.
Yeah, I will.
Because I do want to know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I will.
That's really
he said,
well, Pauline Del Cormen was a spiritual healer as well that we interviewed. If you go back and listen to her episode, we didn't talk a whole lot about the spiritual healing part because we were kind of all over the place.
Maybe we could do another interview with her where we actually bring in the spiritual.
We said when her next book comes out, we will. So, I would love to do that. Her books are really interesting. Did you ever read?
No, I'm spread too thin right now.
I know, you're hopping all over the place, and, you've got all this stuff going on.
I've got a million different things happening. I'm sorry.
So, I know it's hard, but I did enjoy her book, and it's in places, whether you agree with it or not, it's interesting to look at things from somebody else's point of view, and, hey, who knows? Hey,
that's pretty funny.
So... I get a little frustrated with some of the tests that they're doing right now to try to find out if they can replicate the feelings of being haunted and seeing ghosts and that kind of thing. They've got a Canadian neuroscientist. His name is Michael Persinger, and he's conducting studies on the effects of electromagnetic fields on people's perception of ghosts. Which it's an important study. I'm not saying it's not important, but what he basically does is he's got a helmet that he calls the God helmet. It goes on the person, and then he makes electromagnetic fields happen in certain areas of the brain. Well, after about 15 to 30 minutes of light electromagnetic fields all over the brain, then the person usually feels like there's a person, like a spirit in the room with them. So, a lot of people think that means that we're just, it's just the electromagnetic waves that make us feel like that's not real. But I think that's more duplicating what's kind of happening with spirits. I think that there's definitely, in my opinion, a connection between electromagnetic waves and spirits. Okay,
I can kind of understand that, but
the ghost hunters have their little EMF detectors and all this stuff, and they do find that there's more electromagnetic activity where spirits are. But I don't think you can make it as simple as it's the electromagnetic field that causes this. I think, yes, they can, but I think also spirits and electromagnetic fields can go together.
You can't really say that it's just the electromagnetic fields that are making people feel like this, because how does that explain ghost stories from the past when there was no electricity?
Well, there can still be electromagnetic fields, but it wouldn't be like nowadays.
Not like now.
Yeah, not like nowadays.
I understand that, each person's giving off small charges of electricity, lightning,
when multiple
static,
people
that sort of thing.
see the same thing? I mean, let's say, we're seeing a ghost right over here, and we're both watching the ghost eat popcorn. I know, kind of crazy, but
that'd be fucking awesome.
It would be. But we're both seeing it. So how could you say it's just because electromagnetic fields were in here? We saw the same thing.
Shared hallucinations are almost impossible. We talked about this with Calvin Parker.
I really don't believe in the whole shared hallucination thing.
Yeah, we talked about this with Calvin Parker and Charlie Hickman.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So,
they're both seeing the same exact thing.
Yeah, that study kind of frustrates me. It really does because of that. It's not that I don't think it's important, because I think it's important to know those things, that, hey, let's look at that first. If I feel like I'm having a haunting in my house, first of all, let's make sure that, we don't have some crazy electromagnetic field stuff going on. But, just to rule out one possibility.
If that were the case also, people living next to power plants, the high power lines and shit like that.
Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do have more activity and stuff. But not always.
Not always, yeah.
So it's probably way more complex than just electromagnetic fields.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that was the case, the people living there, with 100% probability would be experiencing all of this shit.
Right.
But,
and that would be a direct correlation.
Yeah.
Another thing that they're doing is they're looking at, and you and I have talked about this before, infrasound.
Yeah.
For, it sounds so low
the
that
ghost sound.
You can't really hear it. Some animals can. You pick it up, but you're not hearing it with your ears so much, and it can make you feel like something spooky is going on, make you feel uneasy, and that's true. That can happen, but there again, I don't think that explains the whole of ghosts and paranormal.
Yeah. I'm gonna play some right now. I don't know if this is like, this is probably something stupid, just like people going ooh, ooh. It was 4 hours of ghost sounds. What I was looking for is it comes in at 18.98 hertz. It's called the ghost frequency, and whenever you hear it, you can't hear it, but whenever it's being played, whenever you hear it subconsciously, I guess, it's supposed to make it feel like you're in a haunted area.
Right.
And I'm playing it right now.
I don't feel anything. You tried that on me before, though, and it didn't work to where I could tell when you were playing it and when you weren't.
Yeah. So,
Do you feel anything?
No, I felt goosebumps, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing else.
But there again, with something like that, everybody's probably not going to react the same way.
Each person's going to be a little bit different.
I think we're all so different in so many different ways. It makes it hard to do certain studies.
Yep. Yeah, they've got several different of these. One's supposed to make it feel like make you feel paranoia, make you feel just absolutely terrified about everything. So one's supposed to make you feel vomity.
Oh, don't play that one. I hate that feeling.
Yeah, I'm not. I hate that shit too, but.
Yeah, that sucks.
But yeah, I mean, to me, passing everything off as, sounds we can't hear or electromagnetic fields we can't see is just too simple.
Yeah,
There's something else out there.
I agree.
And
I think it's...
Even if you could say, well, yeah, maybe it is, which it might be, how do you explain, like, the poltergeist aspect? Where, let's say, we see that TV fly across the room.
Right.
For no reason. So.
Which, the poltergeist thing, oh my gosh, that's such an interesting topic. People have so many different ideas. Mm-hmm. I think probably the more mainstream at this point, if I'm not mistaken, would be that it's usually a teenage girl who has abilities, doesn't necessarily know it, and has all this frustration. And
Teen
I don't
angst.
think that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that can't happen. I do think that can happen, but I don't think that's the only explanation.
No.
I think poltergeists are, once again, way more complex than we give them credit for. Why does it have to be one thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. Fortunately, I've never had that kind of poltergeist activity, even when we lived in our really haunted house. Mm-hmm. The creepiest thing that would happen is one of the spirits would act like a child and talk to us.
Yeah.
And different people in the family, like, say, I'm here, want to play, and that kind of weird, creepy stuff.
So
but it's not a child. You can feel that it's something more evil than that. But
now,
it would get you when you're by yourself.
Yeah, I think I've told this story before. I don't know. I know I've told it to you. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast yet or not. But the house that we used to live in Louisiana that burned, I would hear a baby crying every now and then. I can explain this a little bit because before we moved into the house, a child did die from SIDS in the house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I'm pretty sure that it wasn't just me. I'll talk to Kelly later. I'll talk to Larissa later and ask them if they remember that. But I remember hearing a baby crying several times in that house. Now, after the house,
I felt a little uneasy in that house, but I never heard anything.
Yeah. Now, after the house burned down, they turned one of the parts that we had added onto it, the den, they turned it into a bar pretty much. And one day, we had a regular. They had a regular there. Uh-huh. I can't remember his name at all now. I'll talk to my dad later and get it from him. But he always sat in the same spot, always ordered the same thing, always came in at the same time, always left at the same time. And he actually died at the bar, sitting in his spot.
Wow.
And one day they were like, hey, Aaron, we need you to go into the bar and get something. This was when they were closed. It was on a Sunday. And when I opened the front door, you could see where the old guy would normally sit at. And I shit you not, I opened that freaking door and that was sitting at the bar. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I believe it. That was probably a place he loved to be.
Yeah. I closed the door, went back and said, hey, Mom, blah, blah, blah is in the bar. And she popped up and ran over. And, of course, no one was there. But, he was there. 110%. Wow. He was there.
But that's one of those things, too. You wonder, is it residual or is it conscious?
Well, I mean, when I opened the door, he actually turned and looked at me. So it was the weirdest shit. I never saw it again. But one other thing about it, the house that burned down, we had one of our dogs died in it. And every now and then you could hear the dog whining. So in the bar. Yeah. So.
And I love those puppies. Yep. Oh, my gosh, especially the little black one, don't say it.
Yeah. That's the one that died.
Oh, he was one of my favorites. He was so sweet.
Yep.
He had spunk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway. He was a funny little guy. But, yeah, he's the one that died. He's the one that you could hear whining every now and then.
Oh. Okay, so now it's time for our scary story. This is a real ghost story that we got from Reddit contributor Zerbo. Thank you, Zerbo, for the story. I am a nurse, and I've worked in lots of different scenarios in the healthcare system, and this story rings true to some of the things that I've seen and heard and heard other people talk about as well. So this is kind of a cool little story. It's kind of short and sweet, but it's really interesting, and I hope you enjoy it. The ambulance company that I used to work for had a haunted ambulance, Rig 12. A lot of EMTs had stories about it, but I never put much stock in the paranormal stuff. That is, until I had my own experience with Rig 12. My partner and I were working in a rural community at 3 a.m., and it was pitch dark and completely quiet. We were both dozing. I was in the driver's seat, and she was in the passenger seat. I woke up to a muffled voice, and I thought my partner was talking. I told her I was trying to sleep and closed my eyes. I distinctly heard a male voice say, "Oh my God, am I dying?" followed by a few seconds of heavy breathing. My partner and I sat up straight and looked back into the patient compartment where it sounded like the voice had come from. Things were quiet for a couple of seconds. Then we heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator and a hiss as if it were leaking. I turned on the lights and we ran out of the rig. I thought a transient might have climbed in while we were asleep, so we opened the rear doors. No one was there. I checked the oxygen bottles. Neither was open. We didn't sleep much after that. So that's a cool little story. I really enjoyed it. It's short, but like I said, it rings very true to some of the things that I've heard in the medical profession. When people die unexpectedly, you know, there's a lot of trauma there, and they kind of stick around, and they can be confused. So kind of a cool little story. So that's our show for today. We want to give a shout out to several different people. We want to first of all give a shout out to Never Ready Media for letting us use your equipment and your space. We want to give a shout out to Never Ready Gamers for the same reason. And we want to give a shout out to Hermit Radio. Check out Hermit Radio. That is a really good podcast. He is a very positive person, and he talks about lots of things to make your life better. So check out Hermit Radio on pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. And we also want to give a shout out to 10-ish Podcast. 10-ish Podcast is a cool podcast. It's comedy and knowledge mixed together. It gives you lots of top 10 lists, fun facts, and that kind of thing. So check them out, and they should be available pretty much anywhere podcasts are found as well. 10-ish Podcast. The last group we want to give a shout out to today is Bad Rad Movies Podcast. The Bad Rad Movies Podcast, they talk about movies, whether they're bad or they're good, and they like to talk about obscure movies that people haven't heard of, especially like old horror movies and things like that, or old action movies. So check them out anywhere podcasts are found as well. So that's basically our episode for today.
Yeah.
And Aaron,
don't burn the roof, guys.
It's a weird day. Don't burn the roof.
Y'all have a nice one.